The Battle of Tours, fought in 732 CE, was a pivotal event in European history, where the fate of the continent hung in the balance. This clash between the Frankish forces, led by Charles Martel, and the Umayyad Caliphate's invading army, commanded by Abdul Rahman Al-Ghafiqi, determined whether Europe would remain predominantly Christian or come under Islamic rule. The battle took place near the city of Tours, in what is modern-day France, and it's often hailed as a defining moment in the defense of Western Europe against Islamic expansion. By the early 8th century, the Umayyad Caliphate had expanded rapidly, conquering vast territories across North Africa, the Middle East, and into the Iberian Peninsula, modern Spain and Portugal. The Muslim forces had swept northward, subjugating the Visigothic kingdom of Hispania and crossing the Pyrenees Mountains into southern France. Their goal was to push further into Europe, taking advantage of the fragmented political landscape and securing more territory for the Islamic Empire. In contrast, Western Europe was a patchwork of smaller kingdoms and territories. The Frankish kingdom, under the rule of the Merovingians, was one of the most powerful of these, but it was undergoing its own internal struggles. Despite these challenges, Charles Martel, the mayor of the palace, was emerging as a formidable military leader. Known as the Hammer for his relentless strength in battle, he was determined to defend his land and people from the Muslim forces advancing from the south. Under the command of Abdul Rahman Al-Ghafiqi, the governor of Al-Andalus, Muslim Spain, the Umayyad army embarked on a northward invasion into Gaul, modern France. Al-Ghafiqi's forces were primarily cavalry, renowned for their speed and ability to cover vast distances, making them a formidable opponent. The Umayyad army was emboldened by earlier victories and raids, which had brought them considerable wealth and success. By the time they reached Tours, Al-Ghafiqi's forces had plundered much of southern France, and their raids struck fear into the heart of the Frankish kingdoms. Their ultimate objective appeared to be the wealthy city of Tours and, potentially, further conquests into the heart of Europe. Charles Martel, recognizing the gravity of the situation, quickly mustered his army to meet the invading force. Unlike the Umayyad cavalry, Martel's army was composed largely of heavily armored infantry, battle-hardened and disciplined. Knowing his troops were outnumbered, he relied on careful positioning and the defensive advantage of the rugged, forested terrain near Tours. Martel chose to take a defensive stance, placing his army on high ground, in a heavily wooded area that would neutralize the speed and mobility of the Umayyad cavalry. His soldiers were trained to hold a phalanx-like formation, a solid wall of shields and spears that would resist cavalry charges. Martel's plan was simple but effective: wear down the Umayyads, exhaust their forces, and strike at the right moment. The Battle of Tours unfolded over several days, with the main fighting occurring on October 10th, 732 CE. For 7 days, the two armies faced each other, testing their strengths with small skirmishes.